I've been speedrunning Snake for about a year now. But Snake was never designed as a speedrunning game. No, in its essence, Snake has always been and will always be a high score game. People trying to beat each other's scores is what made the game so popular in the first place, and some people actually managed to get the maximum score possible, also known as all apples. Well, that right there, getting all apples, is exactly what a few players set out to do, for every single game mode. When Google made its own version of the Snake game, Classic mode was the first and only mode included. Getting all apples in this mode was quite trivial. All you had to do was set your board to small map and go up and down until you finally collect all apples. And even on the standard board size, people are pretty much completing this game mode ever since it came out. It wasn't until January of 2020 that Snake players were faced with a real challenge. During this update of the game, two new modes got introduced. The first one was Peaceful, a mode in which you couldn't die, and it's by far the easiest mode to get all apples in out of every mode ever introduced. However, the second game mode, Wall mode, was quite a different story. The difficulty and luck required to even get close to collecting all apples was something the community wasn't ready for, all the way back in 2020. And Wall All was deemed to be impossible. This was the first time a new mode wasn't easy to complete, but the community didn't have to wait long for another difficult mode to get introduced, because when the next update rolled around in the summer of 2020, the Snake players got Portal mode. Portal mode wasn't as hard as Wall mode, and the players in the community thought beating the mode on the small board was possible. However, no one really had any strategy to try and get all, and the difficulty was too high for anyone at the time. So Portal became the next mode that hadn't been completed. Now that half of the game modes were uncompleted, it wasn't really that people weren't trying to get all apples in every mode. No, people didn't even consider it a possibility. Luckily for them, the next few modes that got introduced weren't too hard. Cheese and Infinity were both easier than Classic, whilst Twin was the same difficulty. Twin was a bit trickier, especially on standard map, but with the help of a very satisfying looking coil and some great reflexes, Super Ultra Jacob managed to get all apples in that as well. Yin Yang took some getting used to at first, but it didn't take long for people to figure out this was actually by far the fastest mode to get all apples in. With this, 7 out of the 9 game modes had been completed, and the community was ready for another challenge. That challenge would come in the form of Key mode. Key mode wasn't very difficult. In fact, it was actually pretty easy until you got late game, but that's when the solid walls containing the apples would start forming problems. Just going in a straight line up and down wasn't going to cut it this time, and players actually had to get creative with their coils. Carrot Coil, named after the Epic Carrot 7, was a step in the right direction. By making the straight lines less long, the chance of a key wall spawning there and messing you up were smaller. You could also adjust your coil quite easily until you got to late game, but to really conquer this mode, something more was needed. A coil with as little straight lines as possible. A coil which would also be named after the player that came up with it. Snippy Coil. So only about 2 weeks after its introduction, Key mode had already been beaten. And whilst everyone else in the server was watching his runs trying to wrap their head around how they would ever pull off this insane looking coil, Snippy was already working on something bigger. literally. Key mode standard board all apples. This was insane. Snippy beat a difficult mode on standard board. This right here was a turning point within the community. After seeing what Snippy managed to accomplish, more and more players were getting bored of just speedrunning the game. They felt like it required too little skill and too much luck, so they started playing high score, trying to push the boundaries of this game. And one of them ended up doing this. Garrett managed to utilize his own coil to become the first person to complete Portal mode. He had only been a part of the server for 3 months, and he managed to do what no one had done before in the 9 months after Portal mode was introduced. And just like that, Wall mode was once again the only mode left uncompleted, and people were still skeptical it would ever get completed. And at this point in time, it was no longer because of a lack of skill from the player base. A lot of people were getting so good at WoW that they could get very late game. But this is when those players started realizing just how much luck WoW all would require. And if that wasn't bad enough, another mode was about to get released. Sokoban came out in April of 2021, and it quickly became by far the most unpopular mode, gaining nicknames like Slokoban and Sokobad. The reasons for this were clear. The game mode was very slow, quite a lot slower than key mode, and it was pretty difficult as well. Because of its low popularity and high difficulty, no one was going for all apples in the mode right after it came out, and it would remain that way for quite some time. On other fronts though, people were making progress. Snippy started what he finished with key mode, completing the game on standard board for all multis. Other players were also finding success. Logerator managed to get a lot of key all apples runs, and a player named Shupadoop was making strides in Portal mode.
Oh my gosh, let's go!
And WoW mode was also seeing a lot of attention, with WoW's small 5-up becoming the go-to mode for a lot of high score players. And when a lot of players play a certain mode for a long time, someone is bound to get lucky. Soupy managed to get the first ever Wall All, the original hard mode that was considered impossible for the longest time, had now been beaten. This was an amazing achievement, and everyone wanted to see how Soupy did it. So naturally, he forgot to record. This mistake by Soupy was so iconic that getting a good run of recording is now officially called pulling a Soupy in the community. But this run, even if it wasn't recorded, would inspire another player to keep grinding and to keep improving. And he wouldn't make the same mistake Soupy made. Weeps managed to do it, and to this day he is the only one that completed the mode on recording. Now, the only unbeaten mode left was the newest one, Sokoban, and since it was the only one left, people now did start taking interest in it. But Slokoban lived up to its nickname, and having to spend 30 minutes only to not be able to get all at the end of it was too much for some of the best players. So they looked elsewhere. Shupadoop had become very good at Portal mode, getting all apples multiple times in increasingly faster speeds. And he was looking for a new challenge. In September, Shupadoop got all apples on Multi 3 in Portal. This run was insane. Portal Multi is so much harder than Portal with one apple, and all it took Shupadoop was a lot of skill, a lot of grinding, and, in the end, less than 5 minutes. So was Shupadoop satisfied? Was he done with the game? No, of course he wasn't. Shupadoop dove straight into his next challenge. It was time. Time for Sokoban. Schnippy also decided to focus on Sokoban, since he had dominated Key and also managed to get all apples in Portal as well. Two legendary players, considered to be the best at the time, were playing the same mode. So naturally, the Sokoban high score was pushed higher and higher. But all apples wouldn't come.
I'm so stupid. Fuck.
Both Shupadoop and Schnippy took a break from Sokoban, but their improvements in the mode got the attention of another player. Me. I set out to collect all Sokoban world records, including the high score ones, and Schnippy's and Shup's improvements to those high score world records meant that I had to get a lot better. I wasn't a high score player, I hadn't beaten any of the other hard modes, but I was determined. And after a lot of grinding, I managed to equal the highest ever Sokoban score of 81, set by Shup. I actually managed to get it twice. But after that, I was trained. I had spent so much time on this mode, and I was ready for a break as well. Sokoban wasn't being run by anyone. But eventually, after over a month of radio silence, one player came back to the mode and figured it out. It was the player that started it all, Schnippy. And on the 23rd of November 2021, he made Snake history. It finally happened. For almost 2 years, Snake had been unfinished, uncompleted, unbeaten. But Schnippy did it and got the last mode. The game had been conquered, and the community could enjoy this amazing moment. For about 2 weeks. Skull mode got introduced on the 8th of December, and the mode wasn't easy. The players had to prepare to grind again, and nobody knew how long it would take for all modes to be beaten once again. It ended up taking less than an hour. Shupadoop managed to beat the mode before the mods even decided on its name, and within 24 hours, Yarmiplay and Schnippy joined him, Schnippy doing so with his first run in the new mode. We've almost reached the end of this video, but not the end of the story. All game modes have been beaten by the community, collectively. However, not a single player has beaten all the modes individually. Who will be the first? Well, right now Schnippy is the closest, only missing Wall, and Shupadoop almost joined him on 4 out of 5 hard modes, coming close to Sokoban all so many times. Maybe Soupy and Weeps have an advantage, since they got Wall all, the most difficult one, out of the way already. Maybe it's one of the newer names in the game, like Centipede or Brahman. Or maybe it's one of the established names who recently came back to high score, like Yarmiplay or Carrot. Or maybe it's me, since I also managed to beat 2 modes after Schnippy's Sokoban all run. And players also keep setting other challenges for themselves, trying to replicate what others did or getting runs no one has done before. Will we ever see Portal all on standard board? Or Sokoban all on any multi-amount? Maybe even Key all in fast mode? Well, with this group of amazing players, I think we will. Be sure to check out everyone I mentioned in this video in the description down below. Thanks for watching, I really hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.